I do really believe 100% from every part of me that everyone has the capacity to be able to do the things that they want and not to be held back by the mental baggage that's in our head that we want to push through.
Welcome to the Do the Thing podcast. In each episode, we get down and personal with people who go after the things they want to make all their wildest dreams come true. Join us as we unveil and dissect a formula for what it takes to do the thing. Here is your host, Stacey Lauren.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Do the Thing podcast. This is your host, Stacey Lauren. All right, guys. Well, I have an amazing guest that is joining me who I met, when did we meet? Was it a year? I feel like it's been a year already.
Sounds about right. I
watched this movie called 10 Rings, and on it, I don't remember what they were doing, but I think it was Muay Thai or something. And I sort of got semi-obsessed with the idea of doing something like that. And then I was Googling stuff. And then anyway, I ended up finding Dan Boyle, who has done that, but also, and he's doing boxing also. And so anyway, we ended up scheduling a time to meet and for me to do boxing. And then the story basically has written itself where then I got really into it and just have really loved working with him at his boxing gym and got to learn more about him and his story. And it's been pretty amazing experience to get to work directly with him. And what did I tell you? I feel like I said you were electric. You're like this electric force full of energy. And anyway, so here we go, guys. Welcome Dan Boyle to the show.
Well, thank you, Stacey. I appreciate that and the kind words. I'm excited and I love teaching people, training them, empowering them just to hit goals they didn't think they could hit, to do different things in their life that they're accustomed to or that they've been told they couldn't do. So that word empowerment is important to me. Why we do what we do and how we defeat ourselves is something also of interest to me. I see a lot of fighters in the fight game actually lose before they even step in the ring. And that comes from fears, which we all have. A little bit of fear is good. That means you care. But after that, you got to rely on your training, rely on what you've done well, and you'll succeed.
I think that's so important. And it's so important to point out. I wrote down what you just said because it's really powerful, is they lose before they even step into the ring because we're really our worst enemy when we don't know how to harness that energy. Right. And the fear of whatever it is we want to do.
The gym was in Coronado, and I had a couple of kids that were not tattooed and all that. And we went to a San Diego inner city competition, and these guys were in fear because the guy had all these tattoos and piercings. And I said, well, the last time I checked, a tattoo has never hit anyone. So don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Focus on your training, focus on your breathing. And you weigh the same as them. So that's there. So what if they're a little older? That doesn't matter. And it's sort of just let them relax. And I said, no matter what, in the fight game, when you get hit that first hit, you focus and go back to that. And the same within life. When you're challenged on different things, a lot of times it was fear driven. And all of a sudden you get out there and it's like, it really wasn't that bad. Whether it's getting a medical procedure or whether it's a report card or whatever the scenario, our mind can be our best asset, but it can also cripple us.
That's what I really learned a lot from these interviews. And I had a lot of experience with dealing with fear before, obviously, doing this podcast. But I think getting to interview different people about these things, what really came to life is fear is really coming from that uncertainty of what's going to happen. And once you can either get to the bottom of whatever is going on, I know I've interviewed a bunch of people that went bankrupt, and that was when they then made 20 times their money after their bankruptcy because they realized, okay, I could go to the bottom and I'm not going to die. I'm going to be fine and get back up. So once you have that, once you kind of break apart that uncertainty more, the fear can dissipate a bit, or at least you can know how to walk through it better.
And I think you grow when you get challenged. If you just sit there and everything comes easily to you, then you just sort of assume that as it goes. But there's always someone, and I'll just refer back to the fight game, but there's always someone a little bigger, a little quicker, a little better condition, more skill, whatever. And I had a funny story about, I got a former student of mine who ended up graduating from Stanford and was studying for her LSATs to get into law school. And she called me up and said, Sabonim, which is a teacher's name in Korean. I said, I was thinking about you, and I hadn't spoken with her in years. And I said, well, what for? And she said, because I'm studying for my LSATs, and I have on my computer screen the 5 Taekwondo tenets that you told us about, which is courtesy, integrity, perseverance, self-control, and indomitable spirit. And so she used those things from when she was a kid to help her grow. And I think one of her parents said that the most growth she had is when you failed her on her red belt test. That's when she learned the most from you. That's when she grew the most. And that's why she's now going to be at law school after being a Stanford grad. Those good habits.
Wow. I really like that perspective, because then that's where that fear of failure goes away, right? Because you're realizing it's not just that you're failing something, what are you learning from it?
Right. Absolutely. We always learn. I mean, the most successful business, if you don't learn, have some failures, that means you're not pushing the boundaries, or you're not challenging yourself enough. It's just you're staying in your comfort zone, and we don't grow from our comfort zone. We grow from challenging ourselves and reassessing situations and pushing that boundary.
That's so good. So, okay, I would love for you to talk more about just your story and how the boxing gym came to be, and sort of what's been going on for you recently. Share your good stuff.
All right. Well, if you haven't learned by now, folks out there, I originally from Boston with this little accent of mine. And then I had moved to Los Angeles and started my training in martial arts there. And eventually found my way down to Coronado back in 2000, 2001, somewhere in that time frame. But I had always been involved in Taekwondo and martial arts. And I've always been a teacher or a coach in some capacity, whether it's baseball, football, tennis, didn't matter. I'd always been around people, and from kids all the way to 80-year-olds. And so I was able to read and assess what they do. And I was in a corporate America, and we were launching this big program, and I had to give this speech. And when I was up there, I finished, and one of the guys that I was close with said, that was the biggest bunch of BS I ever heard. I said, you know what? You're right. And so I left corporate America and decided to do martial arts schools. And I've been doing that for about 30 years now, teaching martial arts and boxing. And like I said, I came to San Diego in 2001, roughly, and opened my own facility and teaching Muay Thai kickboxing, also Taekwondo and regular boxing and women's self-defense. So I got into that, and mainly I just been about coaching and helping people and motivating. And I literally have coached thousands and thousands of our youth, teens, and adults. So from there, I was taught by my master in martial arts to always help others. And I was part of a big family, and I was the number 7 child of 8, and 7 of which were boys. So, yeah, so that was pretty cool. And I get stories on that for a future day. As I started taking care of other people, I noticed that my own health was going. So I took care of me last. And that's when I finally realized when COVID hit and our business was shut down and different things were happening, I launched what I call Operation Dan, Take Care of Me. And my philosophy is take care of yourself first, and then it will go outward to your family and then friends and then community, and you'll be a stronger person for it. So I've been a health coach now for 1.5 years, helping people all over the country lose weight, gain confidence, understand why they're in the situation they're in. And at the same time, I'm still coaching boxing and kickboxing and being involved in the community.
And I think that's one of the things that just really has impressed me about you, is just that way that you approached COVID also, with having that type of business where you couldn't really even serve people. And I think, I don't know if you're comfortable sharing this, but like even losing half your space at the time and then just making the best of it. And now you're on a whole nother level with what you're doing.
Right. And that's all part of my own growth and my own growing. We're always growing. If you're not growing, you're going the other way. And so we don't want to do that. And COVID threw the whole world out of the loop. And so I was angry, like most, for a while that I was forced shut down and the rates were going up and all that stuff, and I couldn't earn a living. So I did like most. I had to readapt, and I said, quit complaining, get off the schneid and get going. So we did classes at a park for a while, and I did them in my garage for a while, and then I just reassessed. So now I had to drop the classes and I just do private. So I'm actually able to change lives in a quicker capacity and with people that are most serious about adjusting. So that's on the martial arts side. And then I saw the other side was about health coaching and with Optavia, and that's just really changed my life. I lost 80 pounds myself, and I help people all over the country, and they're losing anywhere from 10 to 80 pounds. But more importantly, they're learning healthy habits, because that's what it's all about. It's not a diet. Unlike as a fighter, you try to drop weight to make the weigh-in for the fight. And so that's just a short-term fix. But if you really want to change your health, you need healthy habits. You need to hydrate, stay away from the sugars and carbs more so, and just little fuelings along the way. And that's what I love about Optavia, and that's what I love about coaching people and helping them.
That's great. So I want to go back to that in a minute. And I wanted to kind of dive in first to you doing that speech for corporate America. And the guy basically told you it was BS. And then you had agreed. And that's when you opened up your first studio. How did you do that? Like, how did you actually get yourself to do that? Had you experience in opening businesses or
No. It was actually, there was a little bump in between the two. So what I did is I had worked for the cable operator up in Los Angeles, and we were the largest in the market, and we had grown. And originally we had the power ourselves, and as the company and the industry grew, it became more corporate. And a lot of our communities were inner city communities. And so we wanted channels like BET on Jazz and so forth, and we were launching them as a corporation, not as a community. And we're launching Home and Garden in South Central and Inglewood, and that just didn't make sense to me. So I no longer believed in what I was doing, and I decided it was time to make a change. And so I used my 401k money and other stuff, and I was either going to open a martial arts studio, which was my other passion, or I'm a big sports fan, so get into licensed sports products. And my master was still up in LA, so I decided to do that for a while. And then retail was not my passion either. So that's when I came down to San Diego and opened my first gym. I worked at several other people's facilities and then got more involved. And then I ended up hosting tournaments for amateur fighters, and the rest is history.
So cashing in your 401k and opening up a studio, that's something a lot of people would talk about doing, but not actually do. What do you think got you to actually move forward with that?
Well, I thought that I could change lives, and I was looking for an avenue in the cable world what I was in. All I would hear is the complaint. And when I was teaching martial arts, even up in LA, I saw how I could change a life, give a little kid confidence to break his first board, or for an adult to get to their splits and flexibility by working on something consistently. And I said, you know what? That's something I need to do. As far as the risk reward of doing that, I believed in my own skills. I believed in my business acumen from working in the corporate America that I could pull it off. And I was able to do it. There were some things that I still thought like I was in corporate America and I could just write it off. But when it's all your own money, not so much. So I learned some things and I made some mistakes that I regret now, and I wish I'd known, but I wouldn't know. So all those things helped me to get where I'm at now. So I think just something innate. If you're an entrepreneur or if you have passion to change lives, go for it.
And then when you believed in your skills, did you go through any kind of other risk assessment to be able to make that move? Were you thinking, okay, if this doesn't work out, then I could blank, or did you?
Well, I always knew I had skills that were transferable in that industry, and I could have went to someone else. And a lot of guys that I went, because we kept consolidating systems, and I happened to be the one that survived. But a lot of people that didn't survive ended up going somewhere else and did pretty well. So I kind of felt I had a safety net in that regard, but at the same time, I didn't want to go back into that corporate world. I wanted to have more control over my destination, my future.
Gotcha. No, I like that. And then, okay, so I'm uncovering your formula as we're talking for doing the thing. And it's funny because when I know the person, it's like, I already have an idea of your formula anyway, but I didn't have this one for you because we haven't really talked about it. So, I mean, even though I see it through your work, but one of the big, I think your core piece of how you do the thing is the why, finding your reason for doing it, which is you really realizing that you could change a life. And once you get to see that, then it's like everything else sort of ripples from there, it sounds like. So it sounds like that's like a core piece of it, of your formula.
It is in anything we do. It really is. Because if I used to always say, and this went with teachers or coaches or other people, are you a renter or are you an owner? And, a renter just kind of does the basics in the minute, and an owner gives it everything. And so I needed, and I know that about my personality, so I needed the why. The why is important no matter what we do. It's going to be something that helps you through those slower times. Like in martial arts, to get your black belt, it's a long journey. It could be 4 or 5 years. And so it's what we always would say is it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Everyone can go out there and go, I'm going to go do this for X. But when it gets difficult, they usually quit. And so I wasn't going to let that happen. And by writing down your whys, that's real important to me. And as a martial artist and a gym owner, I didn't think I represented my industry or my company well by carrying all that extra weight. I was also someone who couldn't take medicine because of the side effects were incredible. So at one point, I was seeing a cardiologist and I had blood pressure that was 212 over 150. And he's like, I'm surprised you haven't stroked out already. So that's when I was open-minded and said, yeah, I need to change my healthy habits. And I want to walk my daughter down the aisle when she's old enough to get married. I want to represent my position. I want to be happy for my wife. I want to be happy for the people I know. And so I wrote those all down. They're still on the mirror in my bathroom. And you have to have that, and you have to recheck that. Check yourself.
And I think the thing that's really fascinating is because Optavia is relatively new, right? If you think about boxing versus that's in the last year and a half, and you almost needed to get to where you were. Everything had to happen in the way that it happened in order for you now to be on this path that you're on now, right? Like you had to have been able to get where you were saying where you were caring for yourself and things like that.
Good point. Yeah, good point. Yeah. You don't think, like I said, you sort of just mosey along. Okay, I'm just getting by and I'm doing this. And then as we get older, things start to break down and you can't ignore them anymore. So yes, I think COVID, although destroyed my business in some ways, saved my life in other ways. And so I use that to redefine Dan Boyle. And now I'm with a company that also has mentors and like-minded people that are positive, faith-driven in many cases, and just goal-setting people that are happy. And I'm just turning off the television and news, and because it's just, you can't win there. So I sort of reevaluated a lot of things, and that I think has given me the best success of my life. I know my wife and daughter are happier.
So we touched on Optavia, but do you want to go through what that is? So for people that haven't heard of it yet, they know what we're talking about.
Yeah, Optavia was originally Medifast, and Dr. Anderson, who's basically our leader in this, he was a top surgeon at Cleveland Clinic and was just saw surgery after surgery and life's lost and said, there's got to be a better way to do it than getting here and doing some emergency surgery to try to save someone. And so he was on a mission for nutrition and then build a community. But the main 4 components are Dr. A's habits of health. And once you learn why we do certain things, emotional eating, all that type of stuff, so you understand a little bit of the human mindset and why certain things are happening. There's also a coaching system, which they found the most success for people when they were maintaining things was having a coach. And that could be in baseball, that could be in anything in life. So have a coach, then having number 3 would be a positive community of like-minded folks that you can share ideas and talk about and realize you're not in it alone. And that was the 3rd component. And then the science behind their actual fuelings. I'm not a doctor. I don't play one on TV either. but I'm able to go on the success of what the nutritionists and dietitians and scientists have created, doctors. So it's supported by that. So those are the main four components. And it's just about healthy habits, changing one healthy habit at a time. And it's a simple to follow program. And I love that part of it. And then there is a fifth component, which is actually coaching and sharing what I have with others. One of my mentors said, how happy are you lost 80 pounds and you're off medication and all these things? And I said, I'm beyond happy. They put it in a way of, well, don't be selfish. Share that with others and just let them know it's available to them. And so I love being a people's coach and seeing their progress and taking their life back and feeling better about themselves and healthier. And I hear story after story of them on less meds, fitting in clothes I haven't worn in 20, 30 years. And that's a powerful feeling.
I mean, that is definitely changing lives.
Yeah.
So I love this idea of you being this person that really always does the thing with things you do. And now you're getting to help people do the thing. So I'm just kind of wondering, what have you seen with the people that you're working with, the ones that are really successful? What's kind of the common traits that they have on how they are the ones that are succeeding? What are they doing?
I think everyone, you have to do what's going to work for you. And they finally reached their why. They finally reached the no more excuses. And I want to change my life. And they see me and from my success and millions of others that have succeeded. And so they give it a try and they're ready to make a change in their life. So that's sort of where it starts. And then what keeps them going is you start to feel better. You're like, wait a second. I'm not swollen as much as I was. I don't have that same pain that I had before. I have a little more energy. I'm playing with the kids instead of watching the kids. I can go up those stairs and not have trouble breathing. I look better in clothing. Everyone has a different reason and purpose, but the bottom line is they just feel more like themselves. And they haven't done that or felt that in a long time. And that's like I said, that's a pretty powerful feeling that keeps you going. And for myself personally, I feel like I've been given a second chance at real health.
That's amazing. So with the people so it sounds like once they start to feel better, then that sort of takes over and they're able to then hold themselves accountable in that way. But until they do start to feel better, what's kind of the thing that you've noticed for accountability, like for them to stay more accountable to doing things, whether it's them boxing or on Optavia? Kind of think of both things and what keeps someone more in check with what they want to do. Because everyone can say they want to lose 30 pounds or they want to get in shape. But the people that do it, that's a different person than the one that just says they want to. So,
right. You always got to dig deeper and find out what's the real cause and are they ready to do it. I have some very close friends who I know need to lose 50 pounds and they've seen my success and they're not asking me a thing and I'm not pushing it. I'm not going to push it on anyone. You got to want that change in your life. Otherwise, no matter what program you're on, it won't work. I used to have, because we're a military town, I have some young guys, 19, 20. I want to be an MMA fighter. And they come in and all of a sudden they're working for a month and then they want to buy a brand new Mustang. And so then they're not there. I mean, there's fantasy and then there's reality. And a lot of people live in fantasy. So what I think why things work is because if you have a coach, this is the number one thing. I believe everyone needs a coach, and no matter what it is. If your kid was struggling in math, you'd get him a coach. If your kid was struggling in athletics, you'd get him a coach. I mean, so why not you as an adult? If you're struggling in something, why not get a coach to help you, to get you going, to get you on that right track? And then what I liked about Optavia is it's got an easy to follow plan. And it takes you from, okay, I dropped the weight, now what? And then sort of how much now can I eat and so forth. And it just takes you through that process. And the community supports it and the coach supports you. So that's there. And if I'm busy with someone else, like I'm doing a boxing lesson and a fellow coach of mine has a question, they can post it and other mentors and coaches respond. So that's what I love about it.
So are you thinking then for accountability purposes, when you've seen people do the thing, and by doing the thing, it's Optavia boxing, whatever that thing is, it's really just hiring the right coach can do everything for them?
I think first, getting in the right mind space. Second, having a detailed plan that is written out. And then third, making the commitment, whether it's financial or emotional or a partner. If I have people, when I used to work out at the gym before I owned one, I found my success was better when I had another buddy because I was accountable to him. We were there together. He'd always push me. A lot of times human nature is, that's why I love boxing and kickboxing. And they said, "Oh, I'm great. I can run a marathon. I can do this." I said, "Well, okay, come, let's do a private." In a half hour, they're dying. And they said, "Why? I run a marathon. How can I not do this?" I said, it's a different breathing. It's a different, you're tense that the whole time. I got to show you how to relax. And so there's a lot to whatever we do and learning the finite details of everything.
I remember that being one of the most surprising things when I first started boxing with you, is because I hike Cowles Mountain and I do a lot. I can ride my bike 25 miles and I'm never winded. But when I worked out with you the first time, I think we were at 35 minutes. I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting worked.
Yeah. I build that as they go. It might seem like a lot. I had a lady today, and she was struggling a little bit, and so I pull back. I work with someone's ability, and I doing it for so many decades that I can sort of judge who's really not feeling well or not in good health that day, and who's just kind of slacking. Then I use my words. Oh, is that funny one today? The ladies were doing some combinations, and there was little breaks between each one. I go, "What's this, a commercial break? Come on, we can't. Let's go, no excuses." And then they laughed, and then they got mad at me, and then they hit the crap out of it. So that's, you just understanding people, relating to people, knowing when to push. You would never do that extra set or that extra thing if you're by yourself. Just doesn't happen unless you are a professional level anything.
And actually, you just kind of brought up another piece of your formula that I've seen. And you started with it on the episode when you were talking about the tattoos. You just have a really fun kind of sense of humor. And you are able to, I think it goes under controlling your attitude, where you're able to make things fun. And you do that when you're boxing too, sometimes you'll change languages as you're counting numbers and kind of alternating. Do you notice yourself doing that with a lot of things? And how can someone else sort of adapt that fun essence with things that they're doing?
First of all, thank you for saying that. I do appreciate it. I do receive many, many compliments on that, even from people who are top CrossFit athletes, Navy SEALs, and they have their kids in there with me, and they're like, "Wow, I don't know how you relate to that kid and do this and do that." And I don't know, I think God gave me that skill, number one. But I think humor is important because I had those old coaches when it was allowed to scream at your face for an hour. I just don't think that works any longer. I know when to push, and I know when I think they need a little humor. And if you build a rapport with someone, they're willing to take that extra step with you, whether it's weight loss, overall health, or learning a sport.
That's great. I noticed it definitely keeps you entertained, which then makes it easier it makes you want to do it.
Right. And they're like, "We're done? That was an hour? What? That was a half hour? What?" And I says, "Yeah." And then other times I see them come in a little off, and we'll start easier, and then we start picking it up, and then they're like, "Is it over yet?" And then we laugh at that as a group. So I think anything to be successful, you gotta work with who you're working with and understand human nature and people. And when you do that, it's usually going to be successful.
So what do you think's been the hardest thing for you throughout all this stuff and you doing the thing?
That's a good question. Probably the hardest is, I think originally when I was younger, it was holding people to my vision of them. And that's why as I grew, I got older and understood more. I sit down with someone, I said, "Well, what are we trying to accomplish here?" So I know we're on the same page and shooting towards the same goal. And then I listen to the words, and then I listen to comments as we work out. And then I'll sit there maybe a couple of weeks in and say, "Is this what we really want to do? Or are we thinking more of this?" And so that's sort of part of my secret. success, I think.
Yeah, I like that. And then what do you think, if you had one piece of advice to give to people on doing the thing, what do you think it would be?
In general health, I would say you have to hydrate more. Someone had said that 70% of cases in the ER are people dehydrated. So I would, number one, I would hydrate. I haven't verified that, but I've heard it different sources. So from emergency doctors and stuff, people hydrate. I just know when you go in there, first thing they do is give you an IV. So,
I never even thought about that. That's interesting.
Yeah. Again, I haven't finalized it, but I've heard it several times, different people. But I think hydration is important. I think smaller meals throughout the day, controlling your metabolism to stop the spikes up and down. I know that was a negative for me in my personal journey. I would have privates throughout the day, and I'd go and get a mocha frappuccino, and I'd be, I was great for that person. Then I didn't have anyone for 2 hours, and I would crash, and I'd almost need to nap at the gym. And then all of a sudden I would turn around again and go from there. So that was something for me to maintain that more consistently. But I just find it doesn't matter. It's not what I say or someone else says. Find what works for you. Find a coach you can relate with. I had some people when I had my martial arts for the kids, which I stopped that for the kids now, but there's 2 places in town, and someone wouldn't come to me even though I was cheaper and more experienced because they had to go to the other side of town. I mean, I can't answer everybody's questions, but find someone you relate to, take a free class, learn if that's a place you want to grow from.
I really love that advice for doing the thing for health. I think that's so important for people to know. And I'm glad that you mentioned the hydration thing. I'm planning on next week starting to drink like a gallon of water a day. So I'm trying to figure out a strategy for
looking at a minimum of 64 ounces a day. And then once you get that and go, like now, then there's other folks that say we want to get up to half our body weight. So I'm now over 100 ounces a day. Now you're going to find you have to use the restroom. I know all the public restrooms in town, but on my walks throughout the town and on the beach, that would be number one for me. Everything's sort of tied together because some of the things you eat, some of the fruits and stuff, like I drink a glass of OJ late night and the acid, then you don't sleep well and you need to sleep. That's sort of what also triggers weight gain and stress. So there's a lot of components to it. I just think if you started one healthy habit at a time and start with water and then build from there, I would love people to reach out to me, coachdanboyle.com, and I will gladly speak to them or DM them or however they want to. But that would be my number one thing.
Cool. No, I think that's great advice. And then what about in terms of what advice would you give people for, let's say they want to open a business or start a new fitness routine or whatever it is they want to do, and maybe something's holding them back? What would be your biggest piece of advice for them doing the thing in that aspect too?
I think what holds people back is confidence. And do we have the knowledge? Do I have the experience? I will say this, and I've learned from many of my coaches, if you're waiting to start something when everything's perfect, it's never going to happen. You should be smart about it. I said I lived in LA, and I actually went to USC on an entrepreneur program that was sponsored by the SBA, and they helped me build a business plan and understand it. And that's important. You got to have stuff down in black and white. Use some confidants, some other people successful in business, and I have a few friends that do very well, and I'll bounce stuff off of them. And just know that you've done your research. You understand the market, understand your competition, understand your passion, and have enough finance to get it going. But know that you cannot wait until it's perfect. Otherwise, you'll be sitting there in 20 years from now saying, hey, I still want to open this whatever. And you won't do it. And you'll be stuck. I was taught that you need to work 9 to 5 job and you work and you get 2 weeks off and all this. That's a bunch of garbage in my mind. That was a different era. And When I first worked sales in cable television, people were home during the evening. So that was door to door. I'm not going to go at 8 a.m. No one's home. My mother said to me, "You don't have a job. You're not working in the morning." I'm like, "Mom, I got to go when people are there." So do your research, speak to people. There's always going to be naysayers. Always. Even these most successful companies, billion-dollar companies in the world, there were naysayers saying no way. And they're just sitting there laughing. So you've got the opportunity. There's great shows, billion-dollar ideas, Shark Tank, stuff like that, just that gets you thinking out loud, giving them plugs, just because it's something I watch and I believe you need to be challenged.
I never watched Billion Dollar Idea. Is that good?
I enjoy it. It was the first season this year. And the guy who launched that brand, I think it's BAI, the drinks and stuff like that. And he took it from his basement, in essence, to he sold it for $1.6 billion. And now he invests in other people. So what he did is him and his team went around the United States and picked, on each episode, he picked 3 people. And he went and decided one of those 3, and then they could come work with him in his basement. I believe it's in New Jersey. And then from there, they just did exercises and training and different things and see who was his final person that he would actually back, and financially and mentorship. And that to me is as motivating as can be.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's great. And so what would you say to the person that's sitting at home and they're listening to this, they're driving in their car, and they're that person that's waiting for everything to be perfect before they start? They're getting this program and they're getting that program and they're lining everything up and they're perfectly aligned thing. And they're still just kind of like waiting.
Well, I think I said it earlier. You're kind of going to wait another 20 years. You'll never know. Even if you think it's perfect, guess what? The COVID hits or something else changes. There's always, the government re-regulates something, or you can't get the product you're selling. You got to be smart about it, and you got to have some short-term, mid-range, and long-term goals. But maybe you test market it first. Maybe that's something you do, and see if you can get it going before you put a big financial outlay. But if you don't do anything, you're going to be same spot 20 years asking the same question. And that's the majority of Americans.
No, I think that's really good. Okay. And you mentioned something earlier. I forgot to ask you when you mentioned it, but your detailed plan right now, what does that look like for you? You mentioned having a detailed plan right now. When you're
depends on what I'm trying to do. I like right now I have different plans because one, I have my own goals that I share with my mentors and talk them through with Optavia. In fact, I have a call tomorrow that I think bigger, and this is where I'd like to see and where I'd like to be. And then I have some from my business with my partner here at the gym and so forth, and then family. And I have them written down. I use a whiteboard. I have a poster board, and I write stuff down, and I look at it and reassess. And that's worked well for me. But if you don't have it, you're rudderless. You're a pipe dreamer. It's not going to happen because no one knows what's in your mind. And I'm guilty of this sometimes with my wife. Didn't I tell you that? And it's like, no, I told myself that in my head. And she was like, what are you talking about? We've never even mentioned the subject. And I said, oh, I thought I told you. Because I had a conversation with you in my head.
Oh my God, that happens all the time, That's funny.
Right? It's
Tell
true.
me, like, what was, so just let's just say it's for Optavia. What would that look like? What would that written out plan look like? Would it just listen like a date, like a deadline date, or like an idea of what your tasks are? I'm just kind of curious since you
combination. I do believe it's valuable to have a date of when you want to accomplish something by. Like, I want a certain rank in our company by the end of the year. I want certain dollar volume. I want certain amount of coaches to be part of my group. I want to read X amount of self-help books. I want to get involved in 2 or 3 community events. I want to join social organizations and maybe speak in front of them. I'm looking to start a podcast to support it. So there's a lot of different things that go into it. I have some bigger goals that In corporate America, I was always told not to overpromise and underdeliver. The exact opposite. So, as an entrepreneur, you got to think bigger. And so I have those goals and I have some dates, and it sort of keeps me accountable. But at the same time, if it's something I know I'm going to do easily, like we know every day once a week, we're going to take out the trash. So why am I writing that down? It's just going to happen. So it's got to be something that challenges you. And I have a little bit of both. Yeah,
that's really good. Okay, Dan, is there anything that I did not ask you that you wish I did?
When are you coming back to more classes? I appreciate you having me on. Hopefully my words resonated with, even if it's just one person, then I succeeded. I just appreciate this medium and being able to do it. You don't have to be a big corporation to affect people's lives. And I thank you for thinking of me and including me in your podcast. And I've listened to a couple of them beforehand, and I think you do a great job. So keep changing lives and do that thing you do.
Thank you. And go ahead and share. You shared it earlier, but if you could share it again where people can learn more about you.
It's coachdanboyle.com is my website. It's nothing fancy, but it will just give you at least some contact information. Or if you want to Facebook, Instagram, I also Coach Dan Boyle, but I'm in Coronado, California. Dan Boyle, Daniel Boyle, either way. And I'd love to talk to you, see if I can help you along whatever journey you have. That's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on.
All right. You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Do the Thing podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show, but even more, we hope you'll be inspired to do the thing. Do you have a burning question on doing the thing that you'd like answered? How about an inspiring do the thing story of your own that you'd like to share? We'd love to hear all about it. Just leave us a voice message at dothething.callcast.co or email us at hello@dothethingpodcast.com.